the clicker? Okay. Okay, so I think I'm probably the only speaker who probably took this question quite literally on what is plurality's North Star. Plurality does not have one North Star, it has many. And like stars, all of us are here in this room, hurtling through space-time, radiating out our beliefs and desires, just like light. So some might think the question of plurality is, how do we keep our light as differentiated as the stars we see in the night sky? Some might say differentiate in markets. Okay, well that's surely better than being told what we want, which would certainly diminish our light. But are all preferences expressed in this way, in monetary trades? Well, we also reveal what we want when we talk or trade time. And increasingly we talk on digital channels which trade access for our data. And this challenges our plurality in several ways. First, channels make money by maximizing engagement and auctioning off our data, as we know. And it turns out we are most engaged when we are in conflict. So instead of surfacing consensus, today's digital channels nudge conflict, reducing our plurality into polarity on a collision course. Second, channels hoover up our data, accumulating the power to build monolithic AIs that perhaps know us better than we want and can manipulate our preferences in ways that we can't see or know. This risks collapsing us from plurality into black hole singularity. So how do we avoid both singularity and polarity in favor of this third way, plurality? There are lots of open questions about communication channels. What are they? Questions about speech norms, questions about privacy and the uses of shared data, questions about even the structure of the pipes themselves. And all of these questions are actually interrelated. So who decides and how do they decide? $1, one vote, one person, one vote, one token, one vote. And how do we express and balance all these participants' preferences? Well, we can learn from the stars. It turns out, actually, that light intensity decreases inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the star. If brightness didn't diminish by an inverse square law, but was, for example, linear, light would envelop the whole sky and we would lose differentiation. Similarly, rather than having people linearly project the intensity of their preferences and drown out all other voices, what we want is greater marginal cost, more influence. Now, quadratic voting is very interesting, and it does this by making the next vote more expensive than the first, proportionally increasing the cost of more influence. And interestingly enough, the same is also true of gravity. If it didn't diminish by an inverse square law, stars would collapse into each other. But is quadratic voting really all that we need to find consensus across all of our lights in this room? Essentially square rooting over the intensity of our brain's preferences? Or is something missing? Heart. Or the greatest mystery of the universe, love. Where does our light, our beliefs, our desires, our preferences, which we project out, come from after all? Well, it turns out we are social beings born into a set of solidarities, starting with our family, school, and neighborhoods. As we age, we differentiate and broaden our communities, growing a rich network of overlapping memberships with different magnitudes of affection, which change over time, as well as the communities themselves, which are in perpetual stochastic recombination. And like stars, as we age, we contract, our solidarities shrinking, and perhaps our intensity increasing. Now, these communities look like communication channels, which I've drawn before, and that's because they are bound by norms and values. And it's through these channels that we form and evolve our preferences and even language norms to express them. And because our preferences are emergent from these conversations, simply making the cost of our influence proportional to how much we care isn't enough. We also need to discount how biased or influenced we are by the conversations and the channels themselves. So, returning to the analogy of stars, on the macro level, we look like these self-sovereign stars, right, flying through the universe, emanating preferences, which we square root over so we can differentiate and see the light from other stars. But light is also a wave and can have properties instantaneously entangled with other light waves across vast distances. And so what we really want to know is, underneath the intensity of our preferences, how correlated or entangled are they with other people's by this invisible, messy, stochastic social process we call communication. Our light may seem differentiated and idiosyncratic on the surface, but may be correlated with other light waves across vast differences and distances. So in fact, digital communication channels do just that, create greater entanglements across distance. So recognizing this intimate connection between our preferences and our solidarities, our light and our loves, helps us guard against both the evil of bias or spin of correlated groups, which threaten to collapse us into their singularity, and profitable collision courses which enrich one group or a set of groups at everyone else's expense. And instead, we find a third way, channels governed by consensus, not only across many light, but different kinds of light and different kinds of stars, drawing on the shared wisdom of different kinds of light and many lights and many kinds of stars to continue expanding a possibility space for infinite recombination entanglements that rival the plurality we see dotting the night sky. Welcome to Stellar Punk, a new paradigm. Bring your brains, hearts, and your square roots.